Hi folks, welcome back to Teacher Tech. Today we'll be looking at how to use Doctopus, the add-on for Doctopus, the add-on for Google Drive. To begin this, all you're going to need is a file that you want to distribute to multiple students. So I've got one that's a reflection on performance on an assessment. So in Google Drive, I'm just going to create a new a new spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet we can name in just a minute. The big thing we need to do with this is go to add-ons and get add-ons. We're going to need to get the Doctopus add-on. You can see on mine I've searched for this kind of thing before, so Doctopus is actually one of the top ones that comes up for me, but if not, you can search for it right here, Doctopus. And then it's going to be the New Visions Cloud Lab Doctopus. There isn't another one that you could choose here. Site Maestro is something different, so don't pick that one. Make sure it's the Doctopus. And that one's free. It's going to ask for permission to do a few things here, and this is a legit service, so go ahead and hit accept on this. So now that's adding that extension to your Google Spreadsheets universally. So anytime you have a spreadsheet, you have the option to use Doctopus with that now. So you'll get a menu that pops up here, some more information here in case you forget how to set things up. You can go to the Learn More. I'll just close that for now. So first thing you're going to need to do with Doctopus is set up a roster for your students. So here I don't have a roster set up right now, which you won't either if this is your first time using this. So we're going to go to Build New Roster. And that'll set up this spreadsheet to become your roster of students. And it's going to have places for names. It's on this sheet is what we want to do on this one, sorry. That'll set up a place for names and for email addresses. Those are things that we collected, create roster here. Those are things that we collected using a student information survey in one of the earlier videos. So that's where I'm going to get that information from. So I go back here, student information responses is the spreadsheet I'm going to use on that. And just copy and paste here. Doctopus is set up to have columns for first name first, and then last name, and then email address. So if your student information survey wasn't formatted that way, you might want to adjust that or make some modifications to the data that you collected, or just collect the data again with a new survey. So copy and paste that, and then I'll hit refresh so it knows that my roster is input there. I've only got 2 students in this class. They're both me, but you can have quite a few more, of course. Set roster name. What this is going to do is make it so that this list of students, which presumably would be one class that you teach, either one block or one prep of a class that you teach. So just name the roster accordingly. So this would be like block 1. Now create class folders, that's an option that you have here. If you're going to use Doctopus more than just this one time, I'd go ahead and create class folders. That's just going to go through and make a folder for the work that each student does. And then if you use Doctopus again, it can detect that and save the work to those same folders. So it helps with organization if you're going to use Doctopus more than once. Let's go for it here. We'll create class folders, and I noticed on mine I had to uncheck and then recheck that. And then it's going to tell you how things are going to be organized here, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. So all the defaults are fine there. You don't really have any options to change them anyway, so we'll just accept create and share folders. And so right now it's making new folders for each student on the list, which is me and me. So not real interesting right now, but it does give you the information there about where those folders are. Okay, you get a message that it has done that successfully. If you have any incorrect email addresses or kids who are not using Google Drive, it'll pop up with an error message there. Save roster and continue now. And this is where we get into distributing that document. So far all we've done is created folders where we're going to store everything. So we have some options on how we're going to share the document. Individual all the same means I have one form that every kid gets a copy of. Individual differentiated means every kid gets their own copy, but we might have a few different versions. So this would be, well, a differentiated assignment, but it's still an individual differentiated assignment. Project groups means I'm going to have one paper or one file here for a group of students, and it'll let you select which, how you want to set up the groups there. And then whole class means there's just one file, and every kid in the group gets access to it. So everybody is changing the same file. I'm going to do mine individual all the same. So this would be like copying, well, in my case, 2 copies, but 1 class's worth of copies of the same paper, and each kid gets their own to work on. Few other options that you have here: whole class access level. No access means that nobody else can see the work that an individual student does. That's going to be appropriate for mine, but if you want your students to be able to see each other's work, maybe help each other along, or maybe just comment on those things, you have options for those as well. So allow view only. Every kid in the class gets to see everybody else's paper, but only the individual student gets to edit their paper. Allow comment, so that makes it so that not only can every kid view your individual student's work, but they can post a comment like, hey, I noticed that you did this in this sentence, why don't you try this instead? And then allow edit, that makes it so they can actually make changes to each other's documents. I'm going to do no access here, which makes sense with my setup. And then the student access level, allow edit, again, makes it so that the individual student, they can make changes to the file. Allow view only just means that I already prepared this document and I want to share it with the kids so they can see it, but I don't want them to change anything. And allow comment means the kid can see the document I share with them, they can comment on it, but they can't make changes to it. So I don't use the last 2 very often or really at all. Allow edit is what I want to do. I want them to be able to change this document. And then by default, it makes it so that the editors can't share this with new people or delete current people who it's shared with. So I leave that checked. Otherwise, they have the option to delete me from being able to see that. So I don't want them to do that. Later on, you'll have, well, in this case, we actually made folders, so it knows that it wants you, or that you want it to put documents into students' folders. But later on, you'll be able to check that box. You'll have the option to check that box, and it will organize files by student folders there. So make sure you check that one for future things. And then co-teachers, so this would be if somebody else needs to have the same access rights that you have to this, you can put their email address in here. I'm working on my own on this, so I'll leave that one blank. Save and continue. Next. Step 4 is where we select the document that we want to share. So I'm going to choose a different folder here. I had my document in a folder that was just called Doctopus example, I think. So it's okay. So this document brings up the option to select where the folder for your document is, not the document itself. So I want to choose Doctopus. Doctopus demo is the folder I had it in. And you don't want to double click on that and open up the folder. You actually want the folder itself. So Doctopus demo and select. And then the next option is to pick within that folder which document it is you want to share. So here, there's only one document in there that I can share. There's only one file in there. So that's assessment reflection form. And then save and continue. All right, last big thing to do here is to set up naming conventions for the files. So the assignment folder is going to be named right now Block 1, Untitled Spreadsheet. I don't want that. I want this to be called Block 1 Assessment Reflections. And then the due date, and that can create a new folder. If you already have a place to store store those files, you can choose an existing folder. So I'll create a new folder. This is on my end now, where my stuff is going to be stored. And then each one of these documents needs to have a different name so you can tell whose document is whose. So the naming conventions that it has set up is it's going to do the student's last name and then the first name, and then again I'm going to change this part to assessment reflection. All right, now I can choose to email students when I share this with them. So send sharing notification to authors and include a notice, say your reflection on your assessment is ready. So now students can access this. It'll send an email as soon as this gets shared. And the last thing we're going to do here is just double check that your settings are set up the way you want them to be. In particular, I would look for the sharing arrangement. So individual all the same was the one that I wanted to have it. Author access, so the student that you're sending this to, they're allowed to edit it in mine. Class access, they're not allowed to see it at all. And then the form that I wanted to use was the assessment reflection form. And then this just shows you what that email to students is going to look like. So the one that goes to this email address is just going to say, your reflection on your assessment is ready. So if everything looks okay, we can run, copy, and share. And it gives you a little progress bar. So this is where it's actually creating multiple copies of this document and then sharing it with each of the students that you told it to share with. Now we're all done sharing here. We have this manage and assess this assignment. So we end up with some new options on this. So there's, if we close this, there are a few things that it gives you. This exclude column, you can actually use that before you send out the shares, before you send out the copies of the document, if there are certain students who don't need that document, so you can exclude a student from that. The link gets you to that student's document. The last edited time will tell you the last time that the student was accessing this. A grade would be something that you could plug in here. So if you had a certain point value or score code you wanted to include there, once you've looked through their work, you can put that here. And then written feedback, we can do that as well, and then email that stuff to kids. So from this document, to get back to that menu to manage everything, just go back to Add-ons and Doctopus, and then we can go to Manage, or actually just Open Assignments Tool panel. That gets the little window back open that we just had. So from this, we can refresh everything to figure out when the last time students were editing things. The embargo tool is kind of cool, so that makes it so students can no longer edit anything, and you can grade things. So you have some cutoff. The last time you can change it is this time, and you click that button and they can't change it anymore. Send feedback email is going to email kids individually with their grade and the written feedback that you put in. And then when you're done, you can transfer ownership to students. That clears it out of your drive space and lets the kids have access. Now on the student end, I get an email from Mr. Bennett saying I've got the option to edit my assessment reflection. And so I can open that up and start filling this in. So I've left spaces here. This is something that I've used in the past for students to think back on mistakes they may have made on different assessments. So I'd give them a space for their name and the name of the assessment. I use this one for multiple assessments. And let's say question 1. Let's say this is for my Spanish class. Let's say this question was about the predicate form versus the imperfect form. And let's see, I made a big error here looking at my non-existent assignment. Where I went wrong, well, this problem is saying, or this translation is supposed to make was saying that I used to go to the mall, not that I went to the mall once, so I should be using the imperfect form. And so I would need to change my my form of ear. form of here to imperfect. Okay, and I go through whatever the thing is that my teacher sent me. All right, now back on the teacher end of this stuff. So back on the teacher end, I can refresh edits and counts and see that, oh, my star pupil here, Mr. Andrew Bennett, has made a revision here and has added some words to this. And so now I can click here under the links, click on theirs, and now I can see what Andrew Bennett did here. And say, oh, okay, he realizes he should have used the imperfect form and needs to change the form of ear here. So I can do things like here for Andrew. I can, if this were a graded assignment, mine wouldn't be graded here, but give them a grade. Let's see, you're at the master level for this, and written feedback is that recognized the difference between preterite and imperfect. Okay, so now I can send that feedback email. It's going to send the grade and the written feedback there. Send that, and you can kind of personalize the format here. So your grade on the on this file is whatever grade you put in there. So I put master, and then the written feedback, and then if you put comments on the document, they can see that best, and then Senor Bennett. Send emails. Okay, and then last thing I can do with this, I don't need this document anymore. I've already put the grades in if it's something I'm doing the grades with. I'm not using it for assessing anymore, so I'm done with this. Transfer ownership to the students, and now they still have access to it, but it's not cluttering up my my Google Drive with stuff that I don't need anymore. So that's Doctopus in its entirety. If you stuck with this video the whole way through, thanks. This was a longer one, but it's one of those tools that you get pretty speedy with and can really save you a lot of time and works nicely for a variety of projects. If you haven't already, definitely check out the link right here to see how Mr. Alex Dreyer uses Doctopus in his classes. And as always, please leave comments describing how you have or will use Doctopus in your own class, and give other people some ideas for how they can use it in theirs. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.